If you're thirsty, there are some water at the back in water bottles. Don't have to pay for it, it's yours. Just, if you're thirsty, just get some water. Water is free. Isn't that wonderful news? You know what, this is a Shabbat, and I think this is I almost wanted to say it's a watershed. But it is really. I know, thinking of the context of the Shabbat. It is what Israel has been building up for time, an expectation to be set free, to be led out of Egypt. This is the Shabbat that we get to celebrate that. Because from Exodus 13:17, it is the great send-off. It is the time where Israel is set free to go into the promised land and to worship our Father and worship His set-apart name. And we as a group of believers can celebrate that with them. When we were worshiping this morning, I was in my mind's eye seeing a group of people walking through darkness, flags waving, walking forward. Don't know what to expect, knowing to expect the good things. And there were lightning. I know George isn't used to lightning. I used to live and work up in Wombaths in Gauteng now these days. And the lightning was spectacular. It was beautiful. I was just working for Eskom at the time. Lightning wasn't so spectacular. So it was devastating. And as I was thinking about the idea of the lightning is all around us, but lightning is a foretaste. You know what it's a foretaste of? Matthew 27 says, at some stage the coming of the Son of Man will be like a lightning strike. We will see the lightning, the things that's happening in the world, but it's glimpses of His glory and His power. One day there will be a lightning strike, and the heavens will tear open, and Messiah will return. And it's with expectant hearts that we are looking forward to that time, and that is the purpose of the sending off. Is as we were worshiping this morning, this is the trend. I think Ian got the notes. This is the trend. We are walking from a place where devastation was, where our Father presented Himself to a nation who wouldn't accept Him, Egypt. And the remnant of believers walked out of there towards His presence. And this is our journey. This is where we are at. This is what we are doing. The problem is there's just no quick fix. You know? So if you are traveling, any parents ever traveled somewhere here with children in the car? There's a general question that's being asked. And I don't think we have the context of their travels, Israel's travels in the wilderness. I don't think we get the feeling of the experience. We've got enough heat here today. I think we've got a glimpse of that. Although we've got some fans. Maybe we should put that off to have the fullness of the... So, you know what, when I was thinking of a trip, if we are taking a trip somewhere, I'm thinking of anything on two wheels in the mountain. You know, that's what I love to do. The wonder of the trip is when you've gone through the rocks, over the rocks, through the mud, whatever you've experienced, that's all part of the hardship, and you are a little bit bruised at the end of the day, and you feel it. But when you reach a stopover, a point that you and your friend, whoever that travels with you, stop next to each other, and we can share what we have experienced and look at the beauty of nature and creation, that's where we can get to celebrate the Father's goodness and His mercy and creation and the beauty of it. So we are on a trip together. We are going somewhere together. And the journeys together is as important as stopovers. Remember today's story, it says, where is it? In Exodus, let's just read it together. Let's just find it first. Today we are going to speak briefly about, well, I don't know if it's going to be so brief, but we're going to speak about the journeys of Israel. And we find some summary of this in a lovely little book called In the Wilderness. Bamidbar. Numbers 33. And it says, these are the journeys, the Masseh of the children of Israel. And it's the word Masseh, what does it mean? It comes from the word Massa. What does it mean? Do you know? Where does it come from? It is, I haven't got it close. It is to be lifted up, the pulling out of tent pegs. That's what it means. It's the visual picture of this is pulling out of tent pegs, and there are 3 letters in this. Actually, the word Massa is, let's just try to write it. Not very good at it, but let's try anyway. It's a Samech and a Massa. Ayin. It's a Ayin. I just got the revelation. It means Ayin. Okay. Massa. This is the journeys that Israel was embarking on and walked together. And this is chaos, the waters of chaos. This is a thorny place, and this is a man with his hands in the air receiving a revelation. What was the journeys of Israel about? They came through the water into a thorny place with a revelation of who our Father is. So the journeys of the Father for you and I together is when we are experiencing things we're going through difficult times sometimes, but for keeping and focusing our eyes on Him so that we can have the revelation of what He is busy with us. What is He doing? So, and I think that we've spoken about this before. James actually said we have to have a short eye and a long eye. And when I went to optometrist way back when, he gave me contact lenses, which I'm not wearing anymore. He gave me one contact lens at the end to have a short eye so that I can read. And the other eye had to be a long eye so that I can see where I'm going. And this is our challenge in life, is how do we maintain focus on the immediate here now, yet have the long-term vision of where Father takes us. Because the long-term focus of where the Father is taking us and the vision that He has got serious and immediate short-term implications in our lives. And we need to be able to keep our eye on both, because if we lose focus on the short term, we're going to stumble over the rocks. If we lose focus on where we are going in the long term, we're going to lose our way. So it's important to see where our Father is taking us, responding in faith, and walking with Him every step of the way, knowing that His hand is in our lives. And I think that is this was a challenge for Israel, is that they had to realize and could realize that the Father's hand was on their shoulders every step of the way. And when you're walking in the heat of the wilderness, I had the privilege of spending some time in Muscat. That's on the Sinai Peninsula. And I couldn't walk from the hotel room to the swimming pool bare feet. I would have blisters under my feet. Temperature is high 40s, and it is winter. So, these people were traveling with carrying their children, bringing their sheep, carrying their water and their food. Remember in the beginning days? Bringing a cart along, animals, walking days on end. Average of first travels, average 20 kilometers like that on the day. Not on the N2 either. Taking the rough road. And sometimes we have a misconcept. Our concept is not correct of the hardships that they went through. Because we just read, they traveled from this place to that place and they grumbled. It's just a short destination. Why did you grumble? You see the cloud of glory in front of you. Why do you grumble? But we do too. So Numbers 33 has got a stop in the narrative in chapter 33. It tells about everything that they're experiencing and it stops. And it says, this is a summation of all the encampments, all the journeys, and then list all of the journeys. And some of them are not listed in Exodus, the Exodus portion that we are reading today, but we'll just keep to the Numbers version of it. So The travels are divided in different phases. The first phase is the departure from Ramesses. And Ramesses is a place that is without our Father. Egypt the presence of our Father was not celebrated and facilitated by the community that lived there. You agree? The Egyptians is not great on worshipping Adonai, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And when we live in that area for a considerable time, it impacts our lives. And when the Father takes us, He removes us from that place, our lives needs to be restored because some of those cultural things are now settled in our lives and it needs to be extracted so that we can live a set-apart life before our Father. You agree? The principle is sound. You agree? So the first phase of this trip is to get the temptation, our inner temptations, out of our lives. Although we have a revelation of who our Father is, although we have had an experience that our Father is extracting us from Egypt, we still sit with the same problems. The second phase is the transformation of our lives, and we find them sitting at Sinai, receiving the word of our Father and applying it to their lives, different encampments, and then dealing with the temptations of the Moabite woman and everything else around us. And how do we deal with this so that we'll keep our eyes focused on the long term, on the calling of our Father to call us to the promised land, to His presence. And the last is entering the promised land. Ephesians 6, put on the armor of our Father, standing before Him with clean hands and a pure heart. So this is the progression of the 42 encampments in the wilderness. Does it sound familiar to our experience? It's exactly that. Our experience as we live in a relationship with our Father through Messiah is exactly this progression. So I thought it might be applicable to speak about this a little bit today. Is this only found in the narrative of the exodus of Israel out of Egypt? Not so much, because if you look at where creation comes from, remember in the beginning the world was chaotic, tohu vavohu, empty and void. Then our Father speaks and He brings light, speaks His light into my life, spoke His light into creation, and suddenly things become, the order of creation started to appear, and in the end we find the fullness, the rest that Adam and creation entered into Shabbat. This is the focus of the 42 encampments as well. It's a progression from a place without our Father to a place experiencing its fullness. So, man like you and I, before we meet our Father, is in the same journey. Exactly the same journey. But let's think about Adam. Adam was cast out of the garden. He sat without the presence of our Father, and he was in his own Ramesses. And he had to work and restoring his relationship with our Father, coming back. But humanity is slow to learn. And this is a long cycle. It is a cycle from Adam to the second coming of Messiah. Because you find the encampments, the reality of the encampments of between Etam, our Father with them, he was with Noah, and to Pi Hahiroth, the story at the sea, where the sea parted, in Noah's life, where he and his family and the animals went through the judgment of the seas, of the stormy seas. And then we find in the judgments of bitterness and rebellion and choosing a leader in the lives of the people in Babylon. But this is where restoration starts, and we find the man Abraham, his own place, living in a place of idolatry. And our Father calls him from Ur of the Chaldeans, and he moves back into relationship, into the presence of our Father. And his life has got encampments, and so it develops. And the story keeps on unfolding and unfolding and unfolding. And this story it just keeps on in different cycles, in different places. Rabbi Shaul uses this framework when he writes the letter of Romans. Psalm 22 to 24 uses this framework of development, because this is the way that our Father reaches into the darkness, where He gets hold of you and I, and He draws us out of Egypt into His glorious light. And this is the pattern that He always uses. So, Masa is the journeys, and let's try to read it if I can see it. Where's my glasses? Doesn't help. Short eye and long eye. Medium distance doesn't work. Okay, Elei Masa, the Bnei Yisrael Asher, what's that? Yetzu. So these are the journeys, the Masa. These are the journeys of the sons of Israel as which they go forth from the land of Egypt. And Masa, as I said before, means the pulling out of stakes, of tents, moving out. So the reality of this relationship is, how do we experience the trip? Not asking, are we there yet? Looking at the scenery, looking at every experience in your life, where the Father leads you through all the paths and the places that He plans for you, and enjoying the trip. Although it's difficult, can be difficult. If the cloud of His presence is with you, and it's a difficult trip, is it the enemy that's bringing you to places, or is it the Father that's leading you and testing you? And we need to discern that, because it's important that we don't give glory to the enemy when our Father is leading us down a certain path. That's what we should really ask for discernment and revelation to in our lives. Interestingly, the root word of Masa is Nasa, and it means to journey, to remove, to set forward, to depart. So when the Father calls you to go, and you're pulling up stakes, then this is one of the most exciting parts of the trip. I remember in the days when we used to go with Yuzan and Rian. Annelie and I went with Yuzan and Rian, and we did horse endurance racing. Not that we were riding, we were just facilitating. I was the faithful unpaid groom, and we loaded the vehicle. We had a discovery, discovering new eras and boundaries and beautiful places. So packing this thing was a huge story. And I think if we can be excited about what the Father is doing in our lives and recognizing that He is moving us from place to place without grumbling, that in its own is reason for celebration. And Amelia is pulling out stakes at the moment. And the Father does that through each of our lives. It's got different seasons. And He establishes you in a place spiritually, physically, removes you from that place, take you to a next place. And it can be an experience in work, life, different areas of your life. You don't have to physically move. But the Father is taking us through different experiences and seasons. And we need to recognize these seasons and celebrate every one of them. Make the most of what the experiences that the Father has, good or bad, for you right now. Celebrate His faithfulness in your life and move on when He calls us to. So there are two realities with the naming and the names that this mean, because there are not a lot of details about the encampments in terms of what they did, what they experienced apart from grumbling. And so it's difficult for us to get a full picture of what it means, but the wording, the names, does paint a little bit of a picture. So there are two realities in this naming, and it is the physical experience and the spiritual significance of their experience. And I think recognizing that we are living in a physical world, but we are called to live a spiritual reality is part of our experience and our calling. And this is with us from the beginning to the end, because it's the Father's will that no one person of His creation on this earth will be lost, but all of them will meet Him and see Him like that giant flash in the sky of the lightning strike. We will all have a revelation of Messiah, and that we will live according to His will and purposes for our lives. Revelation 12 to 17. So we see different cycles of this 42 pattern camps. We see it in the telling of Moses' life with Israel, and that is the foundation which we build this revelation on. But we see a bigger picture from Genesis to Revelations. This is what we see. Paul uses this to write to the nations to say this is the way you should pattern your lives according to this bigger pattern in drawing closer to our Father. And in the end of days, there's a 42-month journey that we are going to walk with our Father, Revelations 12 to 17, and it follows this pattern. We'll speak about it as we go on. So do you think we are called to move when our Father says, and there are encampments that He's calling us to go to? Certainly, I think we do. Are we all in the same camp spiritually where we are at the moment? Are we all at the same place? No, we are not. But you know what? The Father is calling you and I to respect someone else's spiritual walk, but draw him close in the relationship. Teach him your experience and testimony of the Father's goodness of what we are experiencing in different places. And as we move on together to the end, our testimony and experience will become narrower and smaller, so that we will be focused and able to move forward effectively. Okay. Israel was called out of Egypt to become the light of the nations. Did they succeed? Did they succeed? They succeeded in the person of Yeshua. They succeeded in the person and the reality of Messiah being the light to the world. And I think this is the experience of Messiah living out the life of a perfect person, shows us and gives us example in which to follow. So if we are the disciples of Messiah Yeshua, as we should be and as we are, we look at His life experience and what He loved and what He hated, and we are aligning our lives with His life so that we can be a testimony of our Father's goodness and His mercy and His kindness. We haven't got a cultural calling to walk in our culture according to the practices and things that our culture is calling us so much, as we have as part of as a heavenly citizen of the heavens. Do you agree? So, I heard an interesting story this week. Just quickly, is in relation to Israel. I can't get away from this point. Is Abraham was said, "Those who bless you will be blessed; those who curse you will be cursed." What are we called to do? Bless Israel. So yesterday someone spoke, Hanneli told me about it. Someone spoke and he said, there are two fronts in the world against Israel. There is a front, a military front, and there is a front in the media and in the courts of justice, etc., working to the same purpose of cursing Israel. South Africa is leading this one front, unfortunately. But he acknowledges that although South Africa is leading, the South African government is leading this front, the biggest contributions from individuals in the world comes from South Africans. Isn't that a wonderful testimony of what the Father is doing in people's hearts and lives, regardless of what the culture in the land is promoting? And I think this is what the Father is calling us, to live in a land and in a country which opposes the Father, to be a shining light in the area that we live. To be able to expand the light in our immediate area so that we can become a testimony of His goodness and His mercy and His greatness. So, Messiah entered the world to be a light of the nations. We are disciples of Messiah, and we should be a light unto the people that we live among in George, if this is where we live. This was the teaching from Rabbi Shaul. And he uses this pattern in the writing to the Romans, to the letter of the Romans. I'll get to that. It is according to this pattern, because he recognizes that we should take it step by step to be able to deal with the past, recognize our reality and living with our Father, and where do we go to in the future? It's always the same story. So Messiah filled the pattern. He came from the Father's presence, born in Bethlehem, the house of bread. But this is contrary to the example of Israel, because Israel came from Egypt. Remember? So the next thing that happens is Isaiah 11:1 says, "When Israel was a child, I loved him, and I called my son out of Egypt. And as they called him, as the prophets called Israel, so Israel went from the prophets," in the teaching that they brought. They sacrificed unto the Baalim, and they burned incense to graven images. So what was Messiah's testimony is after his birth, his parents take him to Egypt, so that out of Egypt, my son can be called. He's tested in the wilderness for 40 days, just before he enters his ministry, being the light to the nations, and before he is glorified. It's the same pattern that holds as Israel was tested, so Yeshua came and lived his reality among us, showing us how to be successful and to live this life to bring glory and honor to our Father's name. He demonstrated to us the true way to live, honoring our Father. The fact of the matter is, the Father is waiting for you and I to respond. Moses was a wonderful age of 80 years old when he responded to the message, when he was ready to be used to bring Israel out of Egypt. And 80 is an interesting number. It is, we spoke about 80. We spoke about the curse of the 8th decade some time ago. Do you remember this? We spoke about that curse. As Israel nears the 80th year, in the 8th decade, things starts to fall apart. We saw that in the kingdom of Solomon. We saw that afterwards. Israel now is in 75 years since its modern establishment. And what are they going to experience? Are they going to experience the same destiny as what Solomon and his kingdom experienced? Or are they going to make it, entering a new life with our Father, celebrating His goodness, His glory, and His mercy? That's the big question today. Pei is the consonant with the letter value of 80. So, what was Moses' confession? I cannot speak. Father, I cannot do it because I cannot speak. I don't have the words. So, what's our confession? Are we ready to enter into this mission of bringing the light to the people to whom we are called? What needs to happen before we have the words? The previous letter in alphabet is 70. It's a ayin. It's that number, that one, where we get a revelation, standing with our hands in the air, getting a revelation of who the Father is. Then we are equipped to go and speak, to declare His name. What is your name that I should tell them? Declaring His character, His faithfulness, drawing them out of Egypt. So it's interesting that the Psalms, we're in Psalms 90, says the life of man is, a man will live to 70 years old if he's very strong, 80 years old. And there is some correlation there. If we are blessed, then we will live beyond that age. To glorify, to share our wisdom that the Father has imparted in our lives to the people, to the generation that follows, and so that the revelation that the Father has instilled in a person's life can become generational. We have the words to speak. So first we must have a relation, and then we can express what the eye has seen. And in today's life, before Israel can become the shining light to the nations, where they will become the leader of the nations. Do you know Scripture says that the world leadership, or the leadership governing the world, will sit in Jerusalem in the end of days. At the moment, Israel is fighting for existence. It's an existential battle that they're sitting in. Not to become the leader of the nations, but to exist. This is where they're at. Why are they fighting that battle and not going up to the place where the Father is using them as the originator of wisdom, so that the rest of the world can live by it and glorify our Father together? It's because of the revelation of His calling that our Father is leading Israel into. So, when Israel unified glorifies our Father together and living according to His will and purposes, becoming the shining light to the nations, they will have the perfect place and position to go forward, to lead the nations. Out of ourselves, and I think this was the problem before with Solomon and every other time, the Hasmonean Empire, until we are now. doing it in your own strength, without a unified testimony of following our Father together, things will fall apart because the Father is going to test the testimony. This is why we are praying for the peace of Jerusalem, so that the Sar Shalom, the Prince of Peace, will enter Jerusalem and that the land will be filled with His revelation and knowledge, and so that they can stand up and not be finding their place in the nations, but know that the Father is establishing them to have the light of the kingdom shining out of their midst. That's what we should pray and intercede for Israel for in this time. The problem is that, what's our testimony? Are we fighting for existence every day? We sit in the same place. It's because we haven't got a full revelation of where the Father is taking us and our purpose in this place, that we are trying to survive and just make a living. The Father is leading us to a place where He will call you by name. He has called you by name, but that you will reach, hopefully not the age of 80, but come to the fullness of your understanding of where you are going and fulfill that place. Even if it's you are called to speak to 1, 2, or 3 people and shining the light of the kingdom in those people's lives so that it can grow from that testimony. And I think this is important for us as a family in this year, is that we will realize where has the Father called us to be, what is our role and purpose in this community, and so that we can go forward. So that the Pharaoh of this place can let us go and to serve our Father, worshiping Him together. We've got many brothers and sisters living out in this town, but we're broken up communities. And I really believe that we should draw believers together so that we can stand with a unified voice. Have you read Ezekiel 37 lately? As that there is a little stick in the hand of our Father with the name of Ephraim and his companions. We are called to be a testimony to our companions and to the other Ephraimites out there so that we can stand in unity. We saw some of it here a Sunday or 2 ago. And I think there was a bit of a shaking happening on that day, so that the walls between different groups can be diminished and fall away, but we should follow up and build on that momentum. Ramesses. The first trip. Let's speak about the trips briefly. 42 is perhaps a little bit too many to cover on this day. We can have a little bit of grumbling, maybe, and so forth. But let's just speak about the first 4 or 5. Okay. Especially? At 42 is a bridge too far. All right, so let's just deal with the first couple. The first phase is the phase that we've been delivered from Ramesses, dealing with our temptations in our lives, that we've inherited from Egypt. How do we deal with it? Does these trips illuminate it to us and that we can move forward? So, apparently, Ramesses is a place and a person. The pharaohs of the time, there was Ramesses. There were first, second, and so forth. And according to a learned person, I read a commentary on this name during the week. He says that, and it's an interesting connection, it says that Ramesses stands for, in Egyptian, for the standard bearer of evil. Evil is the standard bearer. What is the standard that South African general people, the Africans, the world are living by in these days? Look at social media, look at what's happening in the world. Evil is the standard. Not set-apartness, not holiness to our Father. That's not the standard anymore. The standard is getting to be evil. So, Ramesses is what that stands for. That's the one that bears up. If you want to plant a flag, a pole with a standard on it, a standard is a banner where people are assembling to in times of difficulty. That's the standard of evil. And then we move to Sukkot. We'll come back to this a couple of times, don't worry. We'll come back to this story. The area of tabernacles, from delivering from Egypt, we move into a place where we recognize that we are sojourners on this earth. Sukkot means tabernacles, a temporary dwelling, a place that we spend some time, but that's not our home where we should be. And they moved out of Ramesses to Sukkot for that message, is to be equipped so that they can assemble and move forward. Take your tent. This is my tent, by the way. Take your tent, recognize your temporal state, and as you came from Ramesses, recognize that there are still brokenness in you. But don't worry, the Father is going to deal with that for you. So the second and third place is Etam. Etam means with them. Pi-hahirot means the mouth of the gorge. That's where they came to the sea of the end. It means Yam Suf. Suf is the end. Yam Sea. And it also means mouth of wrath, or the beginning of wrath. So where do we find, and I think as we work through this, look at your own life. Think where we find yourself. Maybe you're not in the first couple anymore. We've moved on. But there are areas of this in each and every one of our lives. Then after Pi-hahirot, they came out of the sea. Remember, they sang the song of Moses, of victory. And then they were in a 3-day journey. No camping. Continue to move. No camping. It means day and night, moving. Carrying your children. What water did they have? They had the water that they carried with them. What food did they eat? They had the food that they brought out of Egypt. It's now a month later. Grumbling. Do you think they have reason to grumble there? Well, if they followed the Father and saw His manifest presence, they could have trusted the Father and He would have brought an outcome. No grumbling needed. But my life, if someone pushes me to that extent, I tend to grumble a little bit. If I don't have dinner and breakfast, and the next lunch the following day, you'll find me grumbling a little bit. So, then there's a 3-day journey. They come to a little camp called Marah, a camp of bitterness. And what's interesting about Marah, it says that they moved to this place, to the place of waters. They were bitter. And then it says the waters were bitter. So who was bitter here? Both the waters and the people were bitter. They saw the water, it wasn't acceptable, they were bitter. We've been walking for days on end. We are thirsty. This water is not acceptable. We are bitter. Then at Elim, they choose their leader. And we know this is the time of rebellion. And so we'll go through this. And then they go to the Yam Suf again. The Yam Suf is actually Pi-hahirot where they were. They made a circle. You don't know where we are. Let me show you a map. Okay. So, you see the red dot? That's where Ramesses is. And then Sukkot. Sorry, I didn't have that in the map. And then we go all the way down to Etam. This is now day 16, and they have traveled, they've walked from Cape Town to George. Same distance. With your family, your children on your hip, with your donkeys. James has got I've got 2 new little verse. What's a verse? A heifer, 2 new heifers, stringing them along. They don't really want to go. You've got to pull a little bit over the rocks, the cliffs, everything from Cape Town to George. So, and then suddenly, Moshe, because remember the pillar of cloud and fire wasn't with him at this stage. Moshe takes them around. They see the sea. They're very happy. And then they come to a place where they can cross, but they don't. They go to Etam. They travel a whole day, 24 kilometers odd. And the next day, Moshe said, let's turn around, let's go back. And that is when the Egyptians see the trip, and they see they're trapped in the wilderness, and now they're lost. Let's attack. They come to the place of Pi-hahirot, just there before they enter, and they are now they're between a rock and a hard place. And they are strategically, that's the right place for Egypt to attack. So we know Egypt attacks. We know what happens to that. They go around, they travel for 3 days, they come to a place of Marah, then Elim, and then they see the sea again before they go into the wilderness of Sin and to Rephidim, etc. So I just wanted to give you a visual picture of what it might look like. Okay? That's not a GPS map, it's approximate. That's more or less what it is. So Ramesses. The dictionary of proper names of the Old Testament says that evil is a standard bearer. In the land of Egypt, evil is a standard bearer. Look around us. What is celebrated? Evil is celebrated. And it's from there that you and I make a decision to say, we will follow the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and we will get out of this place. Tradition holds that a large portion of Israel didn't go. They stayed behind in Egypt. They just didn't want to leave. And it holds true to the Babylonian exile, remember? Didn't want to leave. We find them in Esther's time. We find them in Persia. They didn't want to go back to Israel. And we find Yehudim today in the whole world. Because Israel isn't a place of comfort to be at the moment. It's a difficult place. Just don't want to go. So, Ramesses in Egyptian is known as, too many consonants, can't pronounce that name. But it's known as that name. It is an acronym known for a long name. And that means, in Egyptian, it means the keeper of harmony and balance. Strong in righteousness. The elect of Ra. So for the Egyptians, do you think it was the right thing to follow that revelation? If that is what it means, would you, if you didn't know anything about anything, and someone comes with that title and it says, follow me, because this is the keeper of harmony and balance, strong in righteousness and the elect of Ra, would you follow him? They lived according to the revelation. Origen originated the story in 184 after Messiah. He was living in Egypt, and he said what that means is confused agitation. I don't know what it means. It's just what I read. Think about what's happening in the world today. From the river to the sea. Think what's happening in the world today. Confused agitation. Sounds rather familiar to me. Egypt is what that stands for. Is that they will come with a false righteousness, present themselves of being the standard and the keeper of harmony and balance, setting up a false standard of righteousness not found in our Father's word or character, and the result of that will be confused agitation. What's our place? What should we do? The Father says that the people in Egypt are born with a fleshly character, nature, and has an evil inclination. This is true of all people in the earth. As we come from a place of natural upbringing, and we live in brokenness, and we need to be restored to our Father's image and His likeness. So Ramesses is true of us before we meet Messiah, and we all come from that place. We need to recognize it, deal with the false balance and harmonies that we used to know in Egypt, and grow into the image of Messiah. So the first journey. So Ramesses is not part of the journey. It is like swimming. Mehmet will know all about this. You stand on the springboard. What do you call this thing? What noem jy dit? Mehmet? Springboard. Okay. I thought I was close. You stand on that thing, that's Ramesses. And then you dive into the water. This is not swimming. This is where you start. Now we're going to Sukkot. That's the first journey. And the first journey is where we find ourselves recognizing that we are in a temporary dwelling. We are responsible before our Father. We are standing, making active choices for right and wrong. And although we intend to choose for our Father, sometimes the brokenness within us stops us from making the right choices. 2 Corinthians 5 says, if this earthly tent gets destroyed, we will inherit an eternal house in the presence of Adonai. So how does this earthly tent get destroyed? Does it mean that we need to lay our physical lives down before we will inherit an eternal house? Or is it the values and the things that's presented here needs to be laid down? And as we do the laying down of our values and things that is contrary to our Father's nature, that we will pick up His life and walk forward. So this is what the first stage represents. Initial salvation experience, free from bondage. However, we are still in a difficult place. So, I don't know about you, but as the traffic in George is increasing, I find resistance is a good thing. Resist the urge. I used to have a vehicle with a big bumper, a Discovery with a thing at the front, and I've been tempted a couple of times to accelerate when I should stop, and so resistance is what it's all about. Okay, because as we resist the urges that's in our life, so it becomes part of our character, and you become gracious and compassionate, slow to anger, and rich in love. Waving, smiling. That's what we're called to. So, the next stopover is Etam. Aleph, Tav, Mem. Aleph, Tav, Mem. It can also be pronounced as Otam, same three consonants, which means their sign. What is their sign? Etam. Etam means with them. The sign that they followed is of our Father that put a messenger in front of them that said, He said, follow Him, walk after Him, do not tempt Him, do not frustrate Him. That was their sign, that our Father is with them. So, the pillar of cloud guided them because our Father was them. And the purpose of this travel is to not look around you anymore and respond, or rather react in the way that you used to, but now respond from the foundation that our Father is instilling in your life. Doing the things that He would do, that Messiah would do, so that we will become devoted and passionate to stand in awe of our Creator, as He wanted the initial people, Adam and Chava, to be. That's our calling. That's the purpose of Etam. So as Moses, his name means drawn out of water, was moving Israel out of Egypt, he was also moving Egypt out of Israel. This is the whole purpose of the trip, is to get us to a place where the presence of our Father will be comfortable in our midst. Okay, so this is what it is. Interesting that Moshe took the bones of Joseph with him. Why did he take the bones of Joseph with him? What's that? Yes, actually what happened is that Joseph made the people of Israel, of his generation, this is now a couple of 100 years, 200 odd years ago, they made an oath to take the bones, his bones, and bury them in Israel. And they didn't have the liberty of not honoring the oath, because this was an oath made by a representative group back in the day, 200 years ago, and they honored it, because this is the way it's done in our Father's ways. So it's symbolic that they took Joseph's bones with them, because it means Joseph says, as you are obedient and as you're walking forward, our Father will add. As you lay your life down, our Father will add His goodness and His mercy in your life. And as we focus on Him and as we're walking with Him, we know that the brokenness in your life will be diminished and His presence and His goodness and glory will grow in your life. That's the thing. We get to Pi Hachirot though, and Pi means mouth. Hachirot is the opening of something, a cave, a gorge, also wrath. They stand at the sea and they now are faced with the wrath of Egypt. Egypt come for them, and sometimes in our lives we feel the same way. is that the old things that we have put away and that we have dealt with, if you wake up one morning, they are there in full force, wanting to destroy you, and your testimony, and the Father's testimony in your life. So the mouth of wrath is where they found themselves. Revelation 6 says, so if you take the same principle and you take it forward to Revelation, it says, with the opening of the sixth seal in Revelation, the kings of the earth will hide in caves from the wrath of the Lamb. Same principle. That is the journey that's going to follow. So as the nations of the earth are approaching Israel, wanting to destroy it, diminish the testimony of the Father and the glory of His name that He's doing in Israel, the wrath of the Father will come, and the kings of the earth will hide in caves. Isaiah 2 says, go into the clefts of the rock and to the crags of the rugged rocks, because of the fear of Adonai and the splendor of His excellency, when He arises to shake the earth mightily. So we can see that there's a little bit of a shake that is starting to happen in the earth. So the mentioning of the cleft of a rock is interesting to me, because we know in Exodus 34, Moshe is hiding in the cleft of a rock, but for the purpose of seeing the glory of the Father. So I imagine that at some stage there will be necessary to just put your head down somewhere in the cleft of the rock, so that we won't focus on what the enemy is doing, but that we can see the glory of what the Father is doing in the Acharei, in the time to come. He will reveal it to His children, to you and I. Matthew 4 says, Yeshua is led into the wilderness so that the enemy could tempt Him. Who led Him into the wilderness so that the enemy would tempt Him? The Spirit led Him into the wilderness. Who led the nation of Israel to this point? The Ruach Elohim. So I'm saying to you one morning, let us assemble and let's go to the city hall, because I know that there is an enemy that wants to destroy us. Let's all gather and go there and stand there and wait. Because as they come, in thousands, overpowering abilities, we've got no chance. But let's go stand there and assemble, and I am sure that the Father will deliver us. The challenge is, will we go? Physically. It's a difficult decision, and I know that we will be hesitant about it, because that's just the responsible thing to do. So, would you say that the Father is a loving Father and that He is there to protect you and guide you and nourish you if He takes you to a place called Pi Hahirot, where the enemy is well positioned to annihilate you? Of course He is, because He plans to deal with the enemy in His own way, and we will be able to glorify Him and give Him honor and glory for the way that He's protecting His household against the enemy. The key is we should trust Him and have faith in Him and know who He is. Then we will go, because a person that knows that full well will be there at 5 o'clock in the morning to be able to stand there, because we've got the expectation and the knowledge that the Father will deliver us. Not acting with swords and whatnot. There's another... I read a little bit, a prayer that says, we should praise the Father and glorify His name and worship Him at all times and gather the ammunition. We've got a responsibility in this as well. But our first priority and the way that we do it is to stand before the Father and say, we know whatever we can do is worth nothing without the deliverance and what you are bringing to this deal. So the focus is never on our ability and the resources that we have. And the same is with Israel today. The focus is not on the might of the IDF. It shouldn't be. It can't be. Because if that is the case, the IDF would be destroyed. So that the Father can show His glory and His might active in Israel today. So let there never be a slogan, in the IDF we trust. Because if that's the case, we know what the future holds. Exodus 14:2 says, just what I said. It's a confirmation. It's wonderful. So, but it is at this point where Israel see our Father dealing with the enemy, not only in Egypt, but here as they are walking on their way to Jerusalem. We sang about going up to Jerusalem this morning. And this is the whole focus of the story, as we are going to the Jerusalem, the new Jerusalem that the Father is preparing for us. So it was at this point that they knew that the Father will deliver him. When they call out to him, he will deliver them. And this at this point where the Song of Moses, and this Shabbat of today is the Shabbat of singing the Song of Moses. This is what the Shabbat is all about. But we've dealt with that a couple of times in the past. That's why I didn't go there again. So, Exodus 15 is the Song of Moses, and it celebrates the deliverance from Egypt, the horse and rider thrown into the sea, and glorifying our Father for dealing with the enemy. So it's Moses leading the nation of Israel to a place of safety. There's another song of Moses in Deuteronomy 32. And there he recounts the mercies and the goodness of the Father. And he says, who is there like you? And this is a song of thanksgiving at the end, just before they enter into the promised land. But this song of Moses that we're dealing with right here in Exodus 15 is dealing with the enemy. That's what it's about. And we find another song in Revelation 15 that builds on the Song of Moses, that Messiah says, he stands on a sea of glass. Is there a sea here in Exodus 15 that we're talking about? The story is the same. The sea of glass resembles the perfect peace that we find in the life of Messiah. Here they were standing in front of a sea, expecting, or actually on the other side, celebrating that our Father has brought him out into his presence. There will come a time that Messiah will lead us out of a difficult time, and we will sing the Song of Moses and the Song of the Lamb. That's a promise. We will get to this, I don't know, maybe this venue isn't here. We'll get to a place and we will sing the song together, ascribing goodness and mercy and glory to our Father. So, next camp, Marah. Walk from George to Mossel Bay in the Karoo. Oh well. Walk from here to Oudtshoorn. Okay, on a lovely day like today. Okay, so it's about 3 days walking, not camping, walking. And the challenge here is to keep your eyes focused on the goodness, the protection, the supply of the Father that keeps us from experiencing the wrath of nature. Think you're walking the same set of plakkies for 40 years. So, the reality is, there's no overflow. There's no abundance, but there's enough. There is enough that the Father supplies that we can do it. Don't grumble. The focus here is focus on what the Father is doing. Remember to be thankful and content. You will get to that place. Do not grumble. If you grumble, you will lose the blessing. Keep focused. Have a joyous heart. The joy of the Lord is our strength. Remember, keep on. Yet they came to a place of bitterness. And they said, even the water in this place is bitter. What do we do? But you know that the Father brought them to that place. It's not by accident. The Father brought them to a place of bitter water to test their hearts. And sometimes we get to a place of bitterness where the Father brings us. And then we can fully see the condition of our hearts. And we should deal with it so that we can be drawn closer to the Father and not move away from Him. Because if we are people of faith and we trust in Him fully, we know that He will provide no matter what our immediate circumstances is. Our Father will provide for us right now and into the future. Do you believe that? Are you sure? Stand up, please. It's hot. So, I think our testimony together is, we know full well that the Father will provide for us in the short term and in the long term. Do you agree? Yes. Do you know who sits behind you? Do you actually? Just have a look. Who sits behind you? Now everybody's looking. Josh sits behind you. Did you know that? Sit down. So I hope everybody is refreshed, ready to go. Not to Mara, to rebellion, to bitterness, but to go to another place and the following camp. But John 16 says, "These things I have spoken unto you. Why did I lead you to a place of bitterness? Why did I bring you to the revelation of what's in your heart, the brokenness of Egypt that still exists within you?" You can see, look in the mirror, and you see the upside down smile, so that we can deal with that. Because we know that the Father says, "He has spoken to us that in me you have peace, and in the world you have tribulation. But be of good cheer. You've walked for 3 days through heat, carrying your water. You come to water that you can't drink. Don't be disappointed. Don't worry. The Father will make a plan. He will sort it out for us." Do we have that faith in us here today? Do you see the value of the tribulation? The tribulation to come. Because we sit in luxury. We've got fans, we've got even water that you don't have to pay for. You know? Isn't life wonderful, soft, beautiful? Have you seen our new chairs? Father is good. There will come a time when we are walking, een voet voor die ander een, wat soek hy voet op die grond. That's what it is. So be of good cheer, for our Father says He has come to overcome the world, even the world within us. And the question is, of Mara, is do we have the faith that our Father can overcome every negative situation? That we won't be tempted to give the enemy the glory of being in a bad place, but that we will recognize that the Father is testing our hearts so that the negativity, everything that doesn't belong in us can be extracted from our lives, even if it's a little bit painful. So, the evidence of the tree in Mara, the evidence of Messiah's sacrifice, brings sweetness to our lives. So if we experience bitterness, what is the solution? Run to Messiah. He will bring the sweetness. So we are choosing a leader in Elim, because El means a ram of strength. In the wilderness, rams are a sign of strength. Elim is the recognizing of leadership and the strength that there is in different people. Different people have been set up to lead. And we should recognize this and remember all leadership in this world. Let's say in a faith community is delegated authority from our Father. It's never a final authority. Never ever. It's a responsibility that people carry to guide and to help people to move into an area where we can recognize the authority of the Father and live out our goal or His goal and will and purposes for our lives. So there are 12 springs that they come to in Elim. It's a beautiful place. They just come from a bitter place. They move to a beautiful area. It's got trees. It's got springs. The children can laugh and dance. You can hear the beauty of a child just laughing away, no problem. The 12 springs are the leaders, symbolically. And the water of life should come out of your mouth as you are leading someone else into a closer relationship with our Father. We see it in the 12 tribes, the 12 apostles, And you and I should be a fountain of living water for someone else that sits at Mara. So that the sweet water from these wells or fountains can become their reality to draw them close. We're not all at the same place in life. If someone is in a place of hurting still at Mara, what do we do when we're at Elim? We run over there. It's 30 odd kilometers, it's not a problem. We run over there, we take them by the hand, we give them the focus of, you know what's at the next encampment? It's beauty. It's the Father's provision. Come with us. 70 palms. 70 is a well-known number in Scripture of the nations. At Sukkot, celebrate the 70 nations. The Sanhedrin to guide and lead people forward in almost hesitant to say it, but in justice. We see justice in this world. But in the justice of our Father to lead people into the ways of Messiah. And even Messiah had 70 followers with him. The bigger group, 70 areas, because they provide shade. The shade that people can sit under and enjoy the days, the hot days. If we trust in Him, He will lead us. He will lead us, and we can become the evidence of His goodness in other people's lives when they are hurting and that they are in a difficult place. So the last stopover for the day, I imagine you're glad that we're going to the sea. If you want to go to the sea, it's not far. The Yam Suf is actually very close, but it's the sea of the end. It means the Red Sea. It's translated as the Red Sea. Actually, the translation of the Red Sea comes out of the Septuagint in Scripture, the Red Sea. But the Yam Suf is a place. Suf Chaim. Suf Chaim is the end of life. Did you know it? I wonder if I've got that. Let's just ignore it for now. That's a rabbit trail. Okay, Yam Suf is an antitype of where our Father delivered the righteous at the Red Sea. Remember at the sea when He delivered Israel coming out and the Egyptians were dealt with and their life were ended right there. So the Yam Suf is the picture of where our Father deals with us and our fleshly lives comes to an end, where He deals with it. We go through almost like a new birth, and when we come out afterwards, we can praise Him and we can sing glory to His name, and we stand before Him renewed, refreshed, and we recognize His glory. This is a reminder. After the days of bitterness and choosing their leaders, our Father is bringing them to a place at the Red Sea where they can just be reminded of what He has done a couple of days ago in their lives. They're invited to travel a couple of days through the desert of Shur. Do you see the tests in these people's lives? It's immense. The testing of their lives was on a daily basis, every day, going through hardship. They didn't find any water. So, did they wonder? It says they searched for water in the wilderness which they couldn't find. That's what it said. But yet the Bible says, the Scripture says, oh, what I forgot to mention, little detail. It's at Etam, just before Pi Hahiroth, at Etam, before they cross the Red Sea. Suddenly, the cloud, our Father speaks, I think it's Exodus 16, He says that the cloud of, the pillar of fire and the cloud of His presence will accompany them from Etam to Pi Hahiroth, through Mara, through Elim. Now they are at a place where they are led by the pillar of fire and cloud. Why was the cloud leading them to a place through 3 days where there were no water? Remember, they had the water at Elim, which they could pick up, fill their bags, everything, bring it forward. It's difficult. You've got animals, you've got children. It's at the next camps where Moses says to our Father, these people are ready to stone me. There must be a solution to this. It's at Rephidim, where they finally come to, after 47 days of traveling through the wilderness, the people come to the place where they are ready to stone Moses. So, as life gets more difficult, our focus on our Father should intensify. Not looking at other people for a solution, but at looking into Him for the solutions. Because we know that in Him only the solutions can be found. So, Shaul, what does he say about and it's a little bit hidden, I know it's a bit hidden, but we need to, let's just see if he mentions the 42 camps. Yam Suf is the last place that we're going to camp out today. But let's just see in other places in Scripture if we can find the same principles. In Romans 1:8 it says, I thank my God through Messiah for you all, that your faith is spoken throughout the world, that you made the decision to come out of Ramesses to follow him in faith. First step. For Elohim is my witness, whom I serve with my spirit, the gospel of his Son. We made a decision that without ceasing, that I make mention always in my prayers, making request by any means at length I might have a prosperous journey by the will of our Father. So, what is our Father doing? Our Father is coming, He came to us. Etam, He's spending time with us. Our Father has come to us. For I long to see you and impart to you some spiritual gift. What is the spiritual gift that we received at Etam? The pillar of fire, the cloud of His glory. This is that I may be comforted together with you by the mutual faith of both you and I. Can't see the bottom. Now I would not have you to be ignorant, brethren. I sometimes purpose to come to you, but that I might have some worshipping with you, following with you. The next chapter verse 18 speaks of Piachirot. Says, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men. Our Father responded to the attack of Egypt at Piachirot. So, the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against everyone, ungodliness, unrighteousness of men who hold truth in unrighteousness. Because that which might be known of God is manifest to them, for our Father has shown it to them. So the glory of our Father is with Israel, is traveling with them, He is with them, yet they grumble. Because that when they knew God, they glorified Him not as their God, neither were they thankful, but their vain imaginations and their foolish heart was darkened. At Marah, they started to respond in rebellion, and they started to react against our Father. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. They rebelled against who He was, and changed the glory of uncorruptible Elohim into an image made like to corruptible men, and to birds and four-footed beasts and creeping things. Wherefore our Father gave them up to the uncleanliness through the lust of their own hearts, to dishonor their bodies between themselves. Who did they choose as their leader here? They changed the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image made like corruptible man. They made a choice against following our Father in following the cultures of this day and following the evil that we see around us. So at Elim we are making a choice. Who do we follow? Do we follow the uncorruptible Elohim, or are we following the ways and the whims of men? Who changed the truth of our Father into a lie and worshipped and served the creature more than the Creator. So if we look at the structure of what this portion of Scripture is that Shaul is writing to, we can see a little bit hidden, but we can see that he's progressing from a place that we have called by faith. The Father is dwelling with us in our temporal bodies. He brings us to a place where the enemy will be judged. And if you are responding and reacting against him, then you will be in that same boat. Or without a boat, I don't know. So, verse 26 says, for this cause God gave them up to their vile affections, for even their women that change their natural use and what's against nature. And if we look at the context of what Shaul is describing, and we see where the world is going to today, we are migrating from a place where culture, the American culture, the South African culture, we worshipped our Father a generation ago. In general, the culture, there was problems. But our Father's and His glory was recognized in society. But we are going from a place where we are making more and more decisions against Him. Verse 27 says, and likewise also to men leaving the natural use of women, speaking about homosexuality. Men with men working that which is unseemly, and receiving themselves and recompense the error which was meet. That recompense of the error which was meet, and even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, our Father gave them over to a reprobate mind to do the things that are not convenient. We are going to see this increasing and increasing because the Father is judging the nations of the earth. And as they start to go more and more off course into their own deceived minds, we will see the gap between righteousness and unrighteousness growing ever so quickly in our day. If we follow the Messiah, we make this change. And this is just a summation. Our temporal dwellings will be restored. We must recognize that we still have brokenness in us. At Piagherot, our unrighteousness will want to hide in our lives. What do? Do we expose it and move and turn and go with our Father? Or are we going to sit and be destroyed? Our Father is committed to the work that He has started within us, and He will lead us to purge the bitterness, the rebellion, not choosing Him as we move along. And then when we reach the last three camps, our Father will demonstrate that He will bring the rebellion against Him and our bitterness to an end. So this is the message of the encampments of our Father is simple. It is our spiritual lives. It is the walk that humanity has in front of our Father, in the face of our Father. I think there is something that is interesting in the last camp, Yam Suf. And let's just try to work through it. I don't know if we will succeed, but let's try. There is a reversal taking place in the two words. The Yam Suf is Yam, a sea, Suf is the sea of the end. And the Hebrew idea of the end of life is Suf Chaim, the end of Chaim, the end of life. So if you take I wonder if I've got it here. If you take the life that we used to live before we met our Father and we extract it, let's just see if we can do this. Do I have a lappy? Okay, Suf. Oops. Suf, Chaim, Chet. How do I spell it with a Aleph Yod? Is that right? Who knows? Nobody knows. Suf, Chaim. Is that how? Mariki, help me. Moet die Aleph uitkom? Yes, I thought so. I thought that looked unfamiliar. Okay, Aleph moet uit wees. Suf Chaim. I think there's another yod in there as far as I know. Thank you. This is sort of unplanned. Okay, Suf Chaim is the end of life. You see it? So what do we do if we extract the old man from our lives? What do we have to do? We have to take the chai out of here. If we take the chai out of there and we put this in there, if we have a crayon, then it becomes Suf Yam. You see what Suf Yam is? Suf Yam is the opposite of Yam Suf. See it? It's the two words, just in a different direction. If you change this, so what the Father does is that what is the old life that is within us, He brings to an end. in His presence. But what He wants to do is so that we will live a life in His presence. That this that is supposed to bring an end will become the process where we are regenerated and we are living in His presence. So that the purpose of the Yam Suf that brought unrighteousness to an end and brought the righteous people through so that they can live and receive the Torah and go to the promised land can be established in your life and in my life. So He reverses the order from life, from death. And this is what we see in Messiah as well, is that Messiah suffered and He died on the cross, but He was resurrected into life. And if we have faith in Him, our humanity, our fleshly nature dies with Him on the cross. It's resurrected with Messiah and we take up His life. So, in Messiah's life, the family fled out of Egypt. The family of Messiah fled to Egypt because it must be said, as the prophecy says, out of Egypt I called my son. Colossians 1:19 says, it pleased the Father that in Him all fullness should dwell. John 1:14, the Word became flesh and tabernacled among us. He was with us. Revelation 21 is the dwelling of our Father is with men, and He will live with Him. Messiah is with us. As a child, the wrath of Herod, like the wrath of Pharaoh, was against Messiah. And Herod had a decree against the sons of Bethlehem, and the enemy came in like a flood. Sounds sort of familiar in this day. But at Marah, Isaiah 53 says, his life was filled with sorrow. Messiah's life was filled with bitterness. What did He do? He brought a life that was in Him, and he shared it with people that were found in bitterness, in leprous people, sick, blind people. He shared His life with them that were found in bitterness, and He brought them from a place of bitterness into life. And His life turned the bitter lives of people into something sweet. Then at Elim, our Messiah says, I do nothing out of my own, but only what I see the Father doing. In Yom Suf, He selected 12 disciples. This was Elim. He selected 12 disciples, and a larger group followed Him. And when Messiah came to the cross, everybody thought it was the end. That was only the beginning. So last thing that I want to share is in Revelations, where we are going to. It's leaving Ramah, says in Revelation 11:8, the woman leaves the spiritual Babylon for the wilderness. Okay? So, and in Revelation 12, it says that now the enemy was with men. So why are we going in that direction? It's because humanity is continuing to live a life, an irresponsible life, leading away from the Father, and the Father is bringing His judgment against them. So it is going in the opposite direction than blessing. The enemy in Piacherot is from the mouth. He will bring judgment against the woman. 12 verse 17. And then remember what happens is that the earth opens up his mouth and helps the woman. Just as the sea parted back in Exodus, the same thing happens in nature. It helps the woman. Marah is the beast rebelling against the Most High, Revelation 13:5 and 6. And in Revelation 13:7, the beast conquers the world and he becomes their leader. Same structure. So what is our focus? This story is all over Scriptures. It follows the same trend. And if we recognize it, it's easy to know where we're going to. Would Israel have grumbled as much as they did if they knew where they were going? No, maybe not. Maybe so, maybe not. But for us it is given that we can know where we are going. So if we focus on what our Father has, we must realize that each one of us is responsible for the camps that we are going through as individuals. But we are going through these steps as a community as well. And there are responsibilities that have become ours. The Word says, if you have heard His Word and the Torah has been made known to you, you're responsible for that, what it says. And we should choose for Him, not against Him. So we walk together, we study together, we worship together. The most important is that we should love one another, because it's in that the Father's name is glorified. But at the times that we are called to do this, it's not really the times of celebration and goodness and beauty and doing the pleasant things in life. The times when it really matters the most is when life is bitter. When the enemy is at Piagirot, come storming in. And then with my brokenness becomes known to you. How are you going to respond to me? Are you going to shun me, show me away? Or are we going to embrace one another, working through these difficult days so that we can walk together? Arriving at Sinai, receiving the words of our Father, and then celebrating His glory and His power and His might, move over to the promised land. This is our calling. So let's not get distracted and lose sight of the bigger picture. Let's not do that. Let's not become hopeless, because that was the problem with Israel to a large extent, is they lost hope every day, sitting at your desk, working on a computer, no joy. Oh, there's lots of joy. The mundane things, the way that we are called to walk, is the way that the Father is leading us through this time that we are walking with Him. Each step is important. The Torah is a lamp for our foot and a light to our path. And if we do it together, it's better. The testimony is good. The Father gets glorified. And we are all hot. We have enjoyed the experience in the wilderness. We've heard the Ruach around us. But mostly let's just unite our hearts. Let's spend time together, not only here. Let's visit one another, build relationships, build a strong relationship outside of this venue, so that when difficult times grow and grow, maybe, that we can take each other's hands, know who we are, walk together, glorifying our Father together. Father, we thank You for the calling that You have placed in our lives to walk together, to celebrate Your presence in our lives every day. Help us to glorify Your name, to make Your name great in good times and in times where we are tested. Times when the heat is turned on and we walk through the wilderness. Help us, Father, to see You in everything that we do, so that we can give You honor and glory and that we can praise Your name. Help us to support those who are sick and those who are wounded and those who are frail. Help us and give us the grace to walk with one another, so that not one of us are left behind, but that we all can walk into Jerusalem. We thank You and we praise in the name of Yeshua. Amen.